Welcome to the second video about the Web IDE for Clarity. Here I will explain about the possibilities to run tests for your contract. We have, for example, the Hello World contract, or also fungible token contract, where we define the fungible tokens and have some methods, function calls to transfer tokens or check the balance. It's initialized with two addresses here. The first address has 20 tokens, the other has 10. And now there are some tests written already. And in these tests, we use a client, a fungible token client that simplifies all the different calls. For example, the client has a deploy contract function or has a function to check the balance of an address. If we want to use and run these tests, we change to package Clarity tutorials, and we just check whether all the yarn the packages are installed. We are here in the Clarity.js SDK repository. That's a mono repository for Clarity development. And I made some changes to the Clarity package, so therefore it's important to be in this repository and then install from here the different dependencies. And to run the test, we can just run and the file is in test tokens, fungible tokens test. And now the unit tests are running. And it's already done. So we see many tests that check the balances or that transfer tokens from one address to the other. And I show you also the client. So in the source folder we have a client, and there's the fungible token client. It takes a provider and it takes an address that's important if we want to deploy it on a Stuxnet, that we can provide customized address, so that we can use our own address. For running unit tests it does not matter, but for completeness we just provide an arbitrary address here. And then we can leverage the functions of the client. We can also move to the client through clicking Control and then use a mouse click, and move backwards with Control, Alt and minus. So now we are back where we were. So this one is a transfer call. So we make a transaction with the method name transfer, and we provide the arguments to and the value of how much we want to transfer. These are string representations of the types, and the client is converting them to Clarity values, and these are then serialized and sent to the Clarity VM in this case. So they are sent to the provider. And after we have a transaction, we have to sign it, and then we submit the transaction. If we have a read-only function, or we want just to query the state of the VM, we can create a query and then submit the query, and the result could be just in this case an integer, an unsigned integer, and the methods to unwrap this from the result. So this method, this client method, returns a number asynchronously. So this is what we do, for example, in this test to check that the first address has 20 tokens initially. Now, after we have done all these tests, we want to deploy it to a Stuxnet. So let's open a new terminal and see whether we can start a blockchain. So we just type Stuxnet mocknet, and here we go. We have mocknet running. So the mocknet is listening on this port, and the Web IDE offers also the possibility to access this this port on the server. And if we type v2 info, for example, we see the current state of our node. Just remember that we have nothing installed on the computer, we just use the browser to execute all these. This works on Chromebooks, maybe even on a tablet, and also on not so powerful devices. So now we have a net and we want to deploy our contract to this network. There's the Stux transaction library in JavaScript that allows you to make these calls. There's also the Clarity, the Blockstack CLI that allows you to make transactions and so on. But for the unit test, we have already all these calls available. And why not leveraging this? Why not using the client also to run the same method calls, contract calls in when we want to talk to the Stux blockchain? Therefore, I created a JSON RCP provider, RPC provider. You provide a private key, and you provide the address like before in the token, in the fungible token client for the unit tests. Here we use our own address, and if you haven't done that yet, you can use the Blockstack CLI. This is still the old version. In the new version you have the Blockstack, and then you have make keychain for the test network. So this one is available here, and here we have our new address. Just copy paste it in here, and the private key in here. And before we can deploy it, that's all we need. Just save it. Maybe we uncomment this line that we really want to deploy it. Now we're good to go. Let me check. We create a provider, but we haven't specified the network API address. So currently it would deploy to the public network. Why not? Let's try and deploy to the public network. So to testnet -master blockstack.org port 443. We need some stacks, So let's go to the faucet and not here, to the faucet block stack down testnet faucet, sorry, testnet faucet, here we go. And we apply for some test tokens, and within a few minutes we have hopefully our tokens. Let's check the status of the testnet. Looks all good. We have some recent faucet transactions, and in 1 to 3 minutes we will see our own transaction here. Let's see in the Explorer. The Explorer of the testnet. Explorer, testnet, Explorer. And let's have a look at the recent transactions. We don't have here we go. This is our faucet transaction, I would say. Let's verify the recipient address, ST2S. Here is the ST, yes. So we have some tokens, and now we can deploy the contract using the JSON RPC provider. So here we go. Go to Clarity packages, Clarity tutorial, and we run the TypeScript script file, and here we go. We have submitted the contract, and we are waiting for a reply that takes a minute or so. And this is part of the JSON RCP provider. So it's submitting the transaction, the deploy transaction to the network, and is waiting for a reply. It's waiting up to 2 minutes to see if the transaction was accepted. And we can already peek here whether we saw a contract deploy transaction. Loading the page. There was not yet our transaction, and going back into the Web IDE, we see hopefully something. I just copied the transaction ID, and we can search for it. Let's see, not found. I put UX in front, and we see that's still pending, and we see our contract running here. And still pending. So, oh, here we go. So we received a result in the transaction in the script. So we waited for the deploy, and then we tried to check the balance for this user, and it's the first user in the contract that is initialized with 20 tokens. So we indeed get 20 tokens back. Well, it should be unsigned 20 tokens, and therefore this call fails, but that's an issue of the Clarity Rust implementation. But we got our result back, so that's fine. The contract is deployed. We see it here, and if we want, we could also make now a contract call for in the sandbox. But this is enough for today. See you soon in the next session.